Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Timeless Movie Podcast, episode number 128. My name is Victor Vasquez. Appreciate you joining me on this episode where we break down movies on this podcast. We talk about new movies that come out in streaming or in theaters. I'll give you some of my thoughts, whether you should check it out in theaters or wait for streaming, or maybe even skip it. And then at the end of the podcast, we discuss whether this film, after watching it one time, is it timeless? Is it something that I can see myself rewatching various different times in the future? If you don't know, Timeless Movie Podcast is available on all platforms like Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube. Go check us out. Give us a follow, subscribe, leave a comment, give me some feedback. Would love to hear what you guys think about the podcast, as well as your guys' opinions on some of the movies that we have been talking about. Speaking of recent movies that we have just talked about, go check out episode 127 of the Timeless Movie Podcast, where I break down the new MCU film, The Thunderbolts. What a blast that movie was. I had such a fun time. Not spoiling anything, but go check out that video, audio, wherever you listen to it. And then in the comments, let me know, do you agree or disagree with me in regards to my thoughts on Thunderbolts? All right, let's go ahead and now dive into this week's episode, in which we are talking about the new film from Vertical called Fight or Flight. This film stars Josh Hartnett and it is directed by James Madigan, his directorial debut, if I'm not mistaken. I could be wrong, but if not, apologies, James. This film, I will be honest, I didn't see any trailers in the theater. This is actually a trailer that I just saw on YouTube pop up as an ad, and I decided, you know what? It has Josh Hartnett. He's starting to have a little bit of a resurgence, coming out in more movies. So let's give it a shot. And I checked it out, and I thought the trailer was okay. It didn't look spectacular. It was just setting up that it's going to be an action comedy type of a movie, but nothing that really blew me away of like, yeah, I got to check this out. But as this weekend came along, I wanted to watch a movie, and so this is one of the ones that was already out, and so I gave it a shot. Now that I got to check it out, let's go ahead and fly over to the non-spoiler section of the Timeless Movie Podcast. That way I can kind of give you a little bit more details about my experience watching this movie. Okay, after leaving the theaters, I gotta say that I was really surprised at how much I enjoyed Fight or Flight. It was so many different combinations of things that I enjoyed. It had funny moments, it had some awesome action scenes and great fight choreography, and then it also had some gruesome deaths that I was not expecting. So all those different elements just really worked for me. And again, as compared to what I saw from the trailers, I didn't expect much. My expectations were pretty low. I actually thought it was probably going to be a bad movie, but it ended up giving me a complete 180, and I came out of the theaters just on such a high. If I had to give you a tagline in regards to what this movie reminds me of, or what it might kind of relate to in other types of action movies, think of basically a John Wick or a Bullet Train, but on a plane. So that's essentially what this movie is. It's all action, but it all takes place on a specific plane that is going from Bangkok to San Francisco. But there's just so many different things that they're able to pull off that, again, we'll dive into it in the spoiler section. I will say that the movie is not perfect. There are a couple of dips that happen throughout the film that kind of, slow things down. But I'm over to kind of overlook that because really the movie's not trying to give you a specific message. It's not trying to, tell you something philosophical. It's really just to entertain the audience, and it does its job. So you got to give it credit for that. Okay, let me give you a little synopsis, a plot. That way you kind of get a sense as to what this film is about. So in Fight or Flight, you basically get introduced to this type of secret organization. They are trying to look for a specific target called the Ghost. Now, this character of the Ghost, they have been able to take funds from different parts of the world, and so now they're trying to track this character down. Now, they find out that the last known locations of the Ghost are that they were in Bangkok. Now, Director Brunt, played by Katie Sackhoff, she is trying to really get some of her folks that are agents in the field to go to Bangkok and stop the Ghost. But she ends up finding out that some of her agents have been taken out, and so she has no other choice but to call her ex-boyfriend and a former Secret Service agent in Lucas Reyes. Lucas Reyes is played by Josh Hartnett, and he has been on the run for 2 years because of something that he did. And, it's not explained at the beginning, but eventually kind of lets you know that information. But Lucas has basically been trying to keep it very low key. But as soon as he gets this call from director Brunt, he is given an opportunity. He is given a chance for redemption and to get his life back so that he doesn't have to run anymore. So he accepts it, and his mission is to find the ghost, bring them into custody, and he gets his life back. What makes this movie so interesting, though, is that it's not going to be that easy because on the plane where the ghost is, Lucas is able to get on that plane, and then he finds out that a majority of the passengers are assassins who are about to take out the ghost. They actually have a contract on the ghost's head, so everybody wants to collect that money. That's essentially what the story's about. It's a lot of chaos, a lot of action. Everything is just taking place on a plane, but just really cool stuff. Again, I think it does its job, which is it shows the audience action. It gives you some funny moments, and it just tries to entertain you for the hour and 40 minutes that it's trying to run throughout the story. So because it nailed the action and it nailed the entertainment for me, and I had such a fun time watching this, my recommendation is going to be go check it out in theaters. This is such a movie that goes under the radar. It barely has any marketing, but if you love silly plots, if you love awesome action, if you're into like these very crazy gory deaths, all kind of combined into one in an action comedy movie, then this is definitely a movie for you. If you don't really care too much about the action genre or action comedy at all, this really won't convince you. You don't have to watch it now. But again, if you're really into John Wick types of movies, Bullet Train, if you're into kind of, things like that where it deals with a lot of action and it all takes place in one location, I think you are really going to dig. So that'll be my recommendation is go check it out in theaters. All right. Those are just some of the non-spoiler thoughts if you haven't seen the movie. Now, let's go ahead and delve into more of the film and start spoiling some stuff in the pros and cons section. So if you don't want to be spoiled, if you don't want to know anything else beyond this point, feel free to jump out of the video, watch Fight or Flight, then come back and listen to my thoughts. And then in the comments, let me know if you agree or disagree with some of the points that I'm about to bring up. All right, let's go ahead and jump into pro number one, which is I really enjoyed that the entire film, or I would say 95% of the film, takes place on a plane. The reason I enjoy this aspect of Fight or Flight is because it opens up two awesome opportunities for the director and the writers to come up with unique scenarios for the characters in this film. I'll start off with the first part of it. Because the film takes place on a plane, you think, okay, well, there's assassins here. Everybody is very deadly. They're combat specialists. So that means you're going to see a lot of different types of action, but you might also see weapons being used because we're so used to seeing guns and things of that nature being used whenever there's action involved. But because it's on a plane, they grounded it in reality and that, hey, well, when you get on a plane, you can't bring weapons that easily. So essentially, all the assassins have to use the surroundings. They have to use whatever items that they can find in order to take each other out and try to get to the ghost. So just to give you an example, Lucas in the film uses food trays. He uses champagne bottles. He uses seat belts. He uses whatever he can find in order to just take out all these assassins and try to protect the ghost. And what's even funnier is that he even uses a fire sprinkler like in the bathroom. It's like he uses whatever is around him. But again, that is because of the writers having to be creative. You're putting these characters in a plane, so you're almost like writing them into a corner, and you have to find a way to get out of it. And so I really enjoyed that they didn't just very easily, let's include some guns because they're all assassins and they're going to find a way to bring them in. It's like, no. Try to make it very different and creative. Now, I do want to say that there are guns that appear in the plane, but what's so awesome is that they found a way to kind of get around it. Somebody was sneaking into the cargo of the plane, and so they were able to bypass a little bit of the security of it. So I gave that one a pass, but again, really enjoyed that because of the setting, because of where this film takes place. It forces the assassins to think a little bit differently in order to try to find the ghost and kill them. So that was, again, one of the awesome aspects of why I enjoyed that the setting is just in one location. Second reason why I enjoyed that it's all in a plane is because the action actually takes place in multiple different levels of the plane. This plane, like I mentioned a little bit in the non-spoiler section, is actually flying from Bangkok all the way to San Francisco. So it's almost like a double-decker, like Airbus plane. So you have the upper deck, which deals with the first class individuals. You have the central deck, or the second deck, I guess, which is economy, and then you have a bottom and lower level, which is the cargo. And the team here for fight or flight utilizes every single space to their advantage. You have fights in first class, you have craziness happening in an economy, and even the cargo level is not safe. You still have interactions there where people have to try to survive and either protect the ghost or they end up giving the ghost away. So, again, putting the director and the writers in a specific situation where, well, we're on a plane, we got to use every single space. Did I not mention that they use a bathroom? They go into different spaces. Again, every little inch of that plane was used to some capacity. Even the actual cockpit, to some extent. It was very small, a very short scene, but they even used that. So that's a very long pro to describe that the setting of having this entire film take place in a plane opens up great opportunities that I really appreciated. Okay, second pro that I want to dive into is, which kind of leads me into some of the action that I was mentioning in the non-spoiler thoughts. A lot of great stuff. What I enjoyed, though, about the action is the choreography and how they filmed the action and all the different types of scenes within the plane. I'll start off with the filming of it. Once again, going back to the same kind of pro, because it all takes place in a plane, you're in a confined space. You're in a location where, you have seats around you. You don't have a lot of room to do what you would normally do if you were an assassin, like out in a city. So the way that they filmed it, it was all up close and personal. Every time you saw Lucas fight off one of the assassins, everything just felt very claustrophobic. Like if he's fighting somebody in the bathroom, you feel like there's not enough room for you as the audience and Lucas and any of the assassins, but you're just having to kind of witness all the punches, all the kicks. Everything just feels so real, so visceral. And what made it even better is the camera didn't cut away. It would sway, it would swerve, but it would always keep its attention on the actual action. So that, I think, goes a long way in making me really enjoy what was going on in regards to fight or flight, is the way that they filmed all this action without having to kind of cut or make any of these weird edits as well. Also, there was a couple of angles that they would pull off in the fight scenes where, there was times where Lucas was under the influence of something. And so sometimes the camera angle would go sideways, almost to kind of mimic that, okay, this is from a perspective of Lucas, like he's a little bit shaky, a little wobbly, and the camera also kind of does that kind of angle shot as well. So really enjoyed that. Moving into the other piece of it, which is the choreography, I'm not going to say that, oh, this is the best action that I've seen in my entire life. I'm not going to say that kind of hyperbole, but I do want to say that the choreography looked good enough where I could enjoy that it wasn't just fake punches or it wasn't fake kicks, or, sometimes you see action movies and it's so easy to tell that, oh, okay, they're not really, going at it. They're not hitting each other. It just doesn't look like it's very fluid. Here, everything felt like it was at a great pace. And I think, again, it has to do with how they filmed it, how close they were. So because of how specifically, central it was to capture all of these moments that Lucas was going through, you couldn't bypass that he was just like missing these punches. So everything felt quick. Everything felt very realistic. And so, again, I really enjoyed that the choreography all looked awesome. Lucas pulled off a couple of crazy moves. Like he used a bar stand in first class to not only hold the guy's arm and then break it, but then he also almost did like a complete spin in order to just lean against the bar and then break somebody's neck. There's just some crazy deaths in this movie, but it all goes to the enjoyment that I had about this movie. All right, third pro that I had was I actually enjoyed the chemistry that Lucas had with the flight attendants on the plane. You have 3 flight attendants that he ends up working with. If there is Isha, there's Royce, and Garrett. All 3 of them are not ready for what's about to happen, or so you think, because we end up finding out that Isha, the flight attendant, is the ghost. So she actually went undercover. She thought that the flight attendant would probably be the best way to make it safely to San Francisco. And so she ended up going as a flight attendant. But apart from Isha, you have Royce and Garrett who are not ready for this stressful situation that they're about to be a part of. And it's just so funny because the banter and the interactions that Lucas has with Royce, with Isha, and with Garrett, it's funny because you have somebody that is a former Secret Service agent. They deal with stressful situations on a normal basis, and then you have these flight attendants who, yes, their job is stressful, but what happens when you have assassins that are trying to kill people? What are you going to do? You have no way to calm that situation down or even get out of it because you're stuck on the plane. And so you have Royce and you have Garrett just freaking out, still trying to help people. But then you have Lucas just telling them, hey, just check for somebody, make sure that they don't look dubious, they don't look like they're trying to do something bad. And if they do, let me know. And so just having that juxtaposition of a character that is not freaking out at all in Lucas, and then you have these flight attendants that are just, they are losing their minds and they don't know what to do, but then they're told, hey, just keep it cool and just do your job. And so just seeing that there, again, it opens up a lot of funny moments and a lot of funny scenes that ends up happening. Like Royce, at one point, the flight attendant ends up kind of saying like he has OCD. And so he's trying to help Lucas, but all he can think about is, well, seat JA wanted coffee, or seat A10 wanted tea. And then so they're super nervous. So it's all this different stuff. But that whole chemistry between Lucas and the actual flight attendants was a big plus for me. And then last and final pro, this one would be very quick. I really dig stories that deal with a individual that's trying to get their life back, especially when they're like on the run. They have to try to keep their life pretty much non-existent, being able to move from different place to different place, and they're just trying to survive. But I always enjoy the stories where they're able to get redemption. Either they get their life back, or they're able to get back to their family, or they're able to come back home. Something about those stories just, I don't know. It's not like I've experienced that in my life at all, but it just makes me appreciate the journey of what that character is going through. So that's exactly what Lucas has to go through in this film. Again, he ended up doing something bad in his backstory that they explain. And, as you kind of get more of that information, all he really wants to do is he just wants to stop running. He wants to go back home, and he hasn't been able to do that for the last 2 years. So those kind of stories and how they kind of set those up, really awesome. The first one that kind of came to mind is like Inception. Leonardo DiCaprio's character who has been on the run, and he just wants to see his kids. He wants to go back home. And so it's those kind of stories that I just really enjoy watching and seeing how they all play out. Speaking of Lucas's backstory, I think this is a great segue into the cons and nitpick section, because there's a couple of things that I just didn't really hit with me. These are the kind of dips that I was talking about. So let's go ahead and jump over to the con section, and I'll start with Lucas's backstory. I didn't mind that he was on the run. Again, that was one of the pros that I had. What I didn't really like is the exposition used in order to explain Lucas's backstory. An exposition, you can't escape it, right? It's in every film. It's, if you don't know, exposition is really when a bunch of characters or a couple of characters just right in the middle of the movie explain a specific aspect of something that you don't know, whether it's, hey, a secret mission, a secret plan, or somebody's backstory in order to give you more color about them. And so there's a specific moment where Director Brunt is talking to one of her, I guess, agents that works below her named Hunter, and she just closes the office door and she says, Lucas Reyes was a former Secret Service agent. And it's just a full-on speech about his backstory. It wasn't done very smoothly. I would have really liked if the film would have kind of sprinkled his backstory in, like, through flashbacks, but just like not from somebody explaining it to me, rather maybe through Lucas's perspective. Like, let's say like he was on a couple of drugs, right? And he just has like these flashbacks of what he did before or what got him in trouble. Something like that would have been very smooth to kind of show that and highlight that within the film, but they didn't do that. And then the second biggest con that I have is in the movie, guys, there is a legit hole in the plane. Somebody brought in the gun, the one that I told you guys, there wasn't too many guns, but when they did bring in the gun, somebody shot a bullet and ended up hitting a window in the plane, and it basically broke a hole in the plane. For a couple minutes, I want to say 5 minutes, but maybe that's too much. You just see a bunch of people trying to hold on to something so that they don't fly out. And then all of a sudden the plane stabilizes. They didn't do anything or explain how they covered that hole, and I don't even know how the plane is still being able to be flying at that specific rate. So that was a little weird to me. Again, something that they may have missed, or maybe it just went over my head. But again, I'm not a pilot. I'm not an engineer. So let me know if there's any pilots or engineers. Let me know in the comments if you feel like if there's a hole in a plane, because could it still fly? I feel like there would be disaster waiting to happen. So that was my second little nitpick and con that I had about this movie. All right, let's go now to the awards section of the Timeless Movie Podcast. Let's give away some awards about MVPs, best scenes, and best shots. Let's go ahead and give it first to the MVP of Fight or Flight. A lot of great performances. I do want to call out Isha, played by Charithra Chandran. Pretty sure I mispronounced her name, so apologies. But she had a awesome performance. Again, that little subversion where you think she's going to be a flight attendant, but she actually is the ghost undercover. So I just want to give that little shout out to Charithra as the ghost and Isha. But my MVP is going to be Josh Hartnett as Lucas Reyes. I mean, Josh was able to do so much in this movie. He comes off first as like a guy that you meet him and you introduce him and he's like drunk. All he wants to do is drink, but it's because you don't really know his backstory. Then as you get to find out more and more about him, you just start, again, connecting with him even more because of all the craziness that he does. He is a skilled combat specialist. He just is never in a specific position where he's stressed out. He knows exactly what he has to do. And as he goes through the movie, he's able to do so much with his character. Sometimes he ends up taking a couple of drugs, and so he has to be very woozy, but still fighting some of the assassins. Then other times, he takes this like toad venom, and then he starts tripping out, and he has even funnier looks on his face. So all this different stuff that Josh was able to pull off as the character of Lucas Reyes was awesome. And then he even has the emotional moments. There's some emotional beats at the end where, all he wanted to do was turn in Isha, the ghost, because he wants his life back. But then at the end, he has to make a decision. Does he turn her in? If he turns her in, they're going to do something with the ghost. They're probably going to kill her and then take all of the equipment that she's been able to build throughout the movie. So he has to make the decision. And so he ends up having these very emotional connections with Isha as well. So for me, MVP, star of the movie, Josh Hartnett in Fight or Flight. Now, moving on to best moment or best scene, I'm going to give this award to Josh Hartnett as well, as he plays Lucas in the scene where he ends up tripping out. Again, I kind of mentioned this a little bit before in his performance, but in a specific scene, he thinks he's taking some type of adrenaline. Instead, he ends up realizing that he takes some type of toad venom. And so it is a drug. It starts making him hallucinate. And it's so freaking hilarious because as you're going through, he's just looking at the assassins and he just has this very weird look on his face. And then you see from his perspective and you just see a bunch of colors in the background and all of the assassins are doing things that are opposite of what they're doing. There's two guys that are fighting. And instead of, from Lucas's perspective, he doesn't see them fighting. He actually sees that they want to make out. And then he sees these other warriors that are flying in the air when in reality they're just jumping and doing spins. And so that entire scene of Lucas just tripping out while still killing a couple of assassins was just so funny because, again, it's just so different from what we had seen before throughout the movie. But again, I really liked how that kind of stuck out to me as that one scene that I kept thinking about after the movie ended. All right, and then best shot or frame of the movie. For me, it's actually a point where you have Lucas involved with the flight attendants. They're trying to look for a space to keep Isha and Lucas safe, and then they end up finding a little cargo hold. They open the door, and it's kind of from a bottom up type of a shot where you have the camera right in the cargo, and as soon as they open it, you just see everybody's heads look into the cargo. Something about that shot, as soon as I saw that, I was like, this kind of represents Fight or Flight for me. A weird, silly movie that involves action, and then you have a Secret Service agent that is working with flight attendants to keep this person safe. Something about that shot just really worked for me, so that is my award for best shot in the movie. All right, those are all of my thoughts on Fight or Flight. A lot of good stuff. I enjoyed this movie. It was a lot of fun. It was silly at times. A lot of gore. I forgot to mention the gore. There's a lot of crazy deaths. It actually reminded me of Gears of War with some of the gore that you saw. There's a literal chainsaw that is in the plane for some reason, and Josh Hartnett's character of Lucas ends up using that. So I forgot to mention that, but there's even moments of those kind of craziness in this film. But the real question that we have to answer is fight or flight timeless? Is it something that I can see myself rewatching multiple times in the future? Even though I had an enjoyable time, it was such a blast. I will say that as of today, Fight or Flight is not a timeless movie. And it's just barely. I was, thinking about it like, okay, would I watch this over another action movie like John Wick? Would I watch it over Bullet Train? I'll be honest, I haven't seen Bullet Train in a while. I enjoyed it. I thought it was fun. I did feel like it was a little slow, but I actually feel like Fight or Flight might be a little bit over Bullet Train. But I can't put this over John Wick. And so that's kind of how I'm basing my decision in regards to this being timeless. Now, that's not going to stop me from recommending it to folks. I'm going to recommend this to friends, to family, anybody that just wants to watch a fun action movie. As long as you can deal with some of the gore, it is such a fun time. So those are my thoughts. As of today, not timeless, but I want to hear from all of you. What are your thoughts on Fight or Flight? Have you had a chance to see it? Are you interested in seeing it now that I've kind of talked a little bit about it? Let me know down below in the comments. Would love to talk more about this movie. All right, everybody. Thank you so much for all of those that stayed all the way through in the podcast to listen to my full thoughts on Fight or Flight. My name is Victor Vasquez. This has been episode number 128 of the Timeless Movie Podcast. Make sure to check out next week's episode because we're going to be covering the new film from Abel Tesfaye. That is right, The Weeknd. And we have his new film called Hurry Up Tomorrow. I am super pumped. So make sure to check out that episode when it drops. All right, everybody. Appreciate you guys and have a great rest of your week.